Welcome to the Gospel Truth Show produced by Cross and Crown Radio. We want to make a lasting difference in your life and in our community. Our mission is to produce biblical, entertaining, and Christ-centered programs for God's people and folks all around the world. Post a comment or a question and sit back and enjoy the show. gospeltruthshow.podbeam.com.
Hello, today we're going to be talking about science of God. This is great for atheists as well as theists. Perhaps we can learn from one another. Ponder all the many ways that modern science has improved our lives. We would not want to live one day without the countless advantages and advances that science has given us and its application. Alfred Whitehead, who was not a Christian, this is what he said. He said, Christianity is a mother of science because of the medieval insistence on the rationality of God. Now, the word science comes from the Latin word scientia, which means knowledge. So just in a sense, a general sense of knowledge, scientia. God has omniscientia. He's omniscience. He has all knowledge, is the claim from the Bible. But science began with the belief in a lawmaker. And this is what Lewis said: men became scientific because they expected law in nature, and they expected law in nature because they believed in a lawgiver. See, the atheists are forced by a priori adherence to material causes, and they want to create an apparatus to investigate all things through materialism. And that cannot be the case. If anything, an atheist should be a Platonist. That might help them a little bit, but ultimately Platonism is arbitrary and has no foundation, so it's false for that reason as well as many other reasons. And that's why the Greeks, they had a few advances in science, but not much. They did not give us this idea that we have today where science really brings great advances in our world. The Greeks did not come up with that. Why? Because Plato would get an ideal or a form, and he would deduce that from the things that he would see. Aristotle would tend to look at particulars and induce principles from them. So they kind of reversed each other. And so the Greeks kind of stumbled along and had a few scientific advances, but nothing like we saw through Christian Europe and through Christian America that we've seen the last 400 years. But during the time of the Arabs' ascendancy, when they were advancing, they did not have many scientific achievements either. They had a few here and there based on the work of Aristotle, but not much. Why did science stall out in the Muslim world? Because of their God. Their God is the foundation for what they know and what they see and what they look at in the world. Their worldview is Allah. Allah is utterly transcendent, so Allah cannot be the foundation nor the ground for science. Allah also has no true attributes, so he does not have the attribute of immutability, which is required for the laws of logic. The laws of logic are required for science as well as the scientific method. Thus, Islam cannot be the foundation for science. Also, Islam is fatalistic, and fatalism is not a good environment for the scientific method. Christian Europe came up with it, advanced it, because of the Christian view of who God is. So science is great, but scientism is false. The definition of scientism that I employ is the belief that the methods of science are the only dependable way to secure knowledge of most things, possibly everything. Scientism's primary problem is, as a worldview, it's self-stultifying, and it's also naive. It's not merely illogical and makeshift and weak, but it's feeble and weedy, and it's overmastered, here it is, by all things. That's a problem. That's a big problem. So we cannot have a scientist who has a worldview without God being able to account for the tools that he utilizes. He may utilize those tools and do it well. He could be a great scientist as an atheist, but he cannot account for the tools that he's utilizing. Christians should embrace science and self-discipline and desire to glorify God in all their endeavors, including science, like Newton did as a Christian, Kepler did as a Christian, and Bacon did as a Christian. All theists. So when people are advocating scientism and they attack religion or philosophy or both, it quickly shows its utter weakness, because to attack it they have to advance a philosophy or a worldview in that very attack. So you can see it undermines itself. It cuts off the branch it's sitting on. Now, most atheists rarely discuss the foundation for induction, and those who uphold scientism also seem unaware of its necessity and how you can account for induction. I delight in the rational genius celebrated in the history of science. Einstein, Newton, Pascal, brilliant, logical, yet all theists. No wonder only theism can account for the laws of logic and human reason and the tools that science must use to make its advancements. Now remember, intellectual pre-commitments assist in directing one's investigation and its analysis of any scientific data that's gathered. That's important. That's powerful. That's mind-blowing, because only the Christian God can give us an accounting for such things. Christian theism delivers the ontic ground for the a priori immutable universals utilized in scientific inquiry as well as rational proof. In principle, materialistic atheism cannot furnish the aforementioned ground, so it falls before it can even start. What is the necessary ontic ground that is needed to account for the scientific analysis? It's a first principle that has the attributes of immutability and universal reach and power, and of course that is God. An immovable point of reference is needed and required that doesn't change, that can yield and give and be the source and the font for all the necessary preconditions utilized in the scientific method, including those universal immutables. So the Christian worldview supplies a fixed ontic platform as a sufficient truth condition that can justify induction, immutable universals, attributes, because all things have attributes, identity, we need to identify things, and the uniformity of the physical world utilized in all scientific analysis. But materialistic atheism lacks such a fixed ontic platform. Consequently, it fails to provide the sufficient ground to justify inquiry in science or research, evidence, and proof. That's one reason God said in the book of Isaiah, "Come, let us reason together." So we have to understand what Bonson said. He said it is one of those embarrassing historical ironies that modern science could not have arisen except in the atmosphere of the Christian world and life view. Nevertheless, the scientific community, much of it today, persists in playing the prodigal by assuming an antagonistic stance against Christianity and its divine revelation. Here's some things that Samples gave as ways that Christianity provided the environment for scientific inquiry. Needed things, needed utilities for the scientific method. Here they are. The physical cosmos is an objective truth, which is ontologically distinct from God. That's called the creator-creation distinction. It's not antithetical, but there is a distinction. Number two, the laws of nature display order, rational form, and regular constants, since they are established by an orderly God. 3. The uniformity of nature. 4. The material cosmos is intelligible because God created us to know Him and His creation as rational beings. Next, men possess the capability to discover the universe's intelligibility, since we're made in God's image and have been placed on the earth to develop knowledge of the world and its application. Next, God reveals that man can and should seek patterns in nature and creation. So that's what Samples said. So what has the explanatory power to account for immutable universals utilized in all scientific inquiry and its pursuits? Only the Christian worldview. Atheism has no consistent way to justify the laws of logic, yet it must utilize these laws to attack theism. That's one reason atheism presupposes theism. What are the required pre-essentials for the intelligibility of mankind's experience? What has to be true to make sense out of our world and our experience, including science and its applications? What dynamics do we utilize in everyday experience? Christianity alone is the ground and the foundation and the font for those universal immutables utilized in all those things I just named. Here's a list of some of the presuppositions of science that the God of creation, the God of the Bible supplies. Number one, the existence of a theory-independent external world. 2, the orderly nature of the external world. 3, the knowability of the external world. 4, the existence of truth, fixed truth. 5, the laws of logic. 6, the reliability of mental and sensory faculties. Number 7, the existence of moral values utilized in science. In other words, to test theories fairly and to report tests and the results accurately and honestly. You need moral values to do that. 9, the uniformity of nature. And 10, induction and the existence of numbers. All those things are required, and only God can account for those things. So Lewis again says men become scientific because they expect law of nature, and they expect law of nature because they believe in a lawgiver. This is Mike Robinson. Until next time, say may God richly bless you.
Hey guys, you can really help us if you donate to our worldwide media outreach. Just go to our Patreon page at Mike Robinson Apologetics on Patreon, or click the donate button on our main page on YouTube and give as the Lord leads. Thank you so much.